vertebrae formation. And so if we look here the structure of the vertebrae, so structure of vertebrae is kind of like this. Structure like this, okay? So this portion is actually the body of the vertebra, what we call vertebral body, okay? And then you have this process, this is called spinous process. And these are essentially called spines. Those are the vertical, the transverse spines. And your spinal cord is sitting right here. So this is the spinal cord. How it is fitting in there, okay? And then, if you know that one vertebra on the other, and this is kind of the vertebral body, what you call the vertebral disc or whatever you call it, okay? Now, how this structure is formed? So, if you remember, the structure was this, this was our neural tube. And right here was your notochord. And right here was your paraxial mesoderm, right? In the paraxial mesoderm, you had this dermamyotome, and then you had this sclerotome, right? So the vertebrae is coming from the sclerotome. So what I'm going to draw it, I'm going to draw it in a way that so this all is the dermamyotome, and we are not worried about this. We have already talked about this, right? Now this is the sclerotome. And this is dermamyotome that has the center dermamyotome and myotome in the surrounding. Now, the cells here, the cells which are here, these cells are going to give vertebral body and parts of transverse process. And the cell here, they are going to give this part of the transfer process and the spinous process. Spinous process. Okay. So how this structure is formed from these cells? That's what we want to know. And what happened that the notochord again played a role there. Notochord is kind of a, if you think about notochord is actually doing everything. Whatever we are talking about, notochord is doing. X notochord is doing this, notochord is doing everything, right? So what notochord does, notochord secrete. So notochord so far we did talk about secrete sonic hedgehog, right? But here it is secreting another thing, what we call eomorphin. notochord secrete eomorphin. And what that eomorphin does, it basically attract these cells. Now these cells will be on the other side also, right? So on the other side will be the same way, the cells will be there, okay? So notochord secrete eomorphin, and what that does, that start attracting, so notochord secrete eomorphin, that eomorphin tell the other mesenchyme cell here to secrete more eomorphin. So the mesenchyme, so notochord secrete eomorphin and induce surrounding mesenchyme cells to secrete same kind of eomorphin. And what this eomorphin does, it attracts sclerotome cells. So this sclerotome cell from here, because they are sclerotome, they start moving like this. So you have the sclerotome cells coming here on this side. Now what is happening? If I'm drawing it in the right way, so this is your spinal cord, this is your neural tube, this is your notochord, and what happened that the cells which are here, these cells they start moving like this. From this side also, these cells they start moving like this. Okay, so they're moving from both sides. Now, this is the neural tube right here. The neural tube, the mesenchyme cell which is here, they start, so mesenchyme cells above neural tube secrete platelet derived growth factor called PDGF. So these cells start secreting PDGF, okay? And the cells which are here, or these sclerotome cells which were initially these cells, they have actually receptor for transforming growth factor beta 2, okay? So these cells which are here, so the cells which are here, so they express TGF beta 2 receptors.
Which cells are those?
These cells.
Do they have a name?
Which are these cells?
This,
Okay.
This process.
Yeah, which are going to make the spinous process. Now, right here, you have PDF secreted, and these cells have the receptor for that, right? So what is going to happen? These cells are going to move toward this, and that's what they do. So what they do, they start moving like this. So these cells are moving from, on the other side also, the cells will start moving like this. Okay? Now, what is going to happen here, these cells are secreting a lot, and these cells don't actually stop moving. So the cells which are coming from here, they are going toward notochord, they are moving toward notochord, and they don't stop here. What they do actually, they crush into the notochord. So what they do is, they essentially form a structure like this. And you will have your spinal cord surrounded there. And here is your notochord, and that notochord is actually crushed. So they have found that this structure, what we call vertebral body. Now, the interesting thing is, most of these cells of the notochord, they die. Okay, so most of the notochord die, but most notochord cells die, some remain and form what we call nuclear pulposi. Form nuclear pulposi. Now this nuclear pulposi is actually a gel-like material. You might have heard like people saying, hey, in common language they say that they don't call it synovial fluid or nuclear pulposi. They call the grease in the bone is gone as you age, right? Especially when the people say, I have a disc problem, right? The disc problem is the pain. The pain happens when you lose these nuclear pulposi cell with the age, and now your bone is kind of rubbing on the other part of the bone. That's the biggest problem. And sometimes you might have heard herniated disc. So that is happening right here, that this herniate there and damage nuclear pulposi, and that herniation then keep on pinching the nerve. So this is kind of a cushion that allow that nerve pinching does not take place. So this is the kind of demise of notochord. So notochord has done everything. So notochord has made us what we are, and here notochord is no more there. Now, this is kind of a simple process, like how they're coming together. But what is the purpose of this whole thing? You are surrounding the nervous system. That's the first thing. But then remember that we said each of the somoid is there, and each of the somoid is giving a special type of muscle. And we also said that each muscle should be innervated by one nerve terminal. So then how the innervation is going to take place if this spinal cord is surrounded by the vertebrae? You need to get nerve out from there. So how that happened, that is interesting thing. So before the formation of vertebrae, this happened now before the formation of vertebrae. This is okay, let me talk again. So what we are saying that vertebra is formed from the scleroderm cell. These two cells from the edges are going to contribute for the formation of the vertebra. And what happened that notochord starts secreting eomorphin, and that induces the surrounding mesenchyme cell to actually make more eomorphin. Eomorphin attract this process, and these cells actually from both sides move toward here. Same way, the mesenchyme above the neural tube, that starts secreting platelet-derived growth factor. And these cells which are right here on the top, which are going to make spinous process, these cells have the receptor called TGF-beta 2 receptor. These are the receptor for PDGF. So these cells are attracted by the PDGF, and these cells move around the spinal cord and start forming the spinous process and the transfer process. Whereas the cell which were moving from this side, they actually go there and actually totally crush the notochord. And they form the body of the vertebrae. And these cells, the notochord cell, most of the notochord cells die, but few cells remain there, form nuclear pulposi, and this is a kind of gel-like material there in the intervertebrate disc. That is making sense? So talk about this for a minute and then we'll go further.
on the scleroderma?
It
It
is.
express the.
Yeah, only the
Okay.
It has these cells at the corner.
Well, that's fine, the cells in the corner,
Doubt?
Yeah, but both cells are part of the scleroderma.
No. What is the question?
I'm kind of just confused which parts go like where.
Okay.
So like these cells go.
Okay, so these cells which are on the top, they are there. They're ultimately forming this. These cells which are on the bottom, they are going down here and basically crushing this thing.
Okay. So how are these formed?
Hmm?
How is this part formed?
This is the later step. I didn't talk about
Oh,
that step.
okay.
Yeah, I didn't talk about that step. That would have been like way more details in that process. So my purpose was to tell you how the spinal cord is encircled and what happens to the notochord and how the body is formed, right? Any other doubt here? Okay. You guys are okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so we are still there, right? So before the vertebrae formation takes place, before the vertebrae formation, so what is happening there, that think about that this is your spinal cord. Okay, and the area right here, this is incipient nerve. From here, the nerve is going to be formed, right? And right here, remember we have the somoid. The somoid are throughout, right? In each somoid, you have that sclerotome there. So right here, in front of this, you have this somoid right here. In front of this, you have this somoid there. In front of this, you have this somoid there. In front of this, you have this somoid there. So these are the places where your nerve is going to form. Incipient nerve. Okay? And right here, this is your sclerotome. Okay? Now, if you remember the structure, it was like this. You had the sclerotome, then you had the myotome, right? And right here was a syndicome. We said cartilage also make bone, right? So cartilage, scleroderm is cartilage, but we know most of the bones are made cartilage to the endochondral ossification. Then tendon, join, bone to the muscle. Right here are the muscle, right? So this was the structure. So if this is your sclerotome, now sclerotome is this, so you should have muscle after this somewhere, right? So here will be this is your myotome. Then myotome is going to give you the muscles, right? Now, these areas where you have all these areas are expressing a lot of axon repellent molecules. You can have some afferents there, you can have some semaphorin there. So, just say here is semaphorin, just for example. Here is also semaphorin, here is also semaphorin. So the nerve which is going to form from here need to go where? Need to come here to the muscle, right? But it cannot go like this because of all those molecules expressing the repellent, the chemorepellent. So what they need to do is they need to cross through this. And how that happened, this sclerodome actually split into two parts. So the sclerodome, right from here, is going to split from the center. So what is going to happen? So say the nerve will be on both sides, I'm just drawing on one side, okay? So say the nerve is coming from here, and the nerve is going to come from here also. So what happened, that the sclerotome divide into two portions, like this, and like this. And here also, the sclerotome, which was here, is going to divide into two portions like this, and here also the sclerotome is going to divide like this. Okay, so this sclerotome that divide here, so this segment will be called the rostral segment. This is the caudal. Okay, this is the rostral for other, because this has divided. This is the caudal, this is the rostral, and this is the caudal. Okay, and now the nerve is moving forward. Nerve is moving forward, and right here you have your muscle. Okay. Then what happened, that this caudal and rostral segment, they actually come together and they fuse. So that is going to lead to a structure like this. So here this is going to fuse with the other. So this is C segment, R segment. Again, you will have this C segment, R segment. Again, here you will have C segment, R segment. And next will be your, and it will finally attach to the muscle. So, the rostral caudal segments fuse to form vertebrae. Making sense? So we are saying that the incipient nerve is there. In front of incipient nerve, you have the sclerotome. Then you have the developing myotome. So this nerve needs to go to the myotome to make connection. But it cannot move around because of all the inhibitory proteins there. So what happened to facilitate that, the sclerotome split into two segments. Rostral segment and caudal segment, and then give a way for this nerve to move forward. And when this nerve moves forward, the caudal segment of one sclerotome fused with the rostral segment of the another sclerotome. And this caudal rostral fusion create actually a new type of sclerotome that is going to give you the vertebrae. And we talk about how the vertebrae is going to come from there. That is making sense? Okay, talk to each other for a minute, then we'll go further. You guys are good here? Okay. Okay, so we're going to talk about formation of dorsal aorta. Now, in the early embryo, so we are on the circulatory system actually, so this is how the circulatory system, aorta means artery, right? So dorsal aorta is the one of the earliest artery that is formed. And this artery is just beneath the vertebrae and above the dorsal part of the kidney. It is formed first and then other arteries are formed and they keep on joining. So essentially the mechanism is the same. So we are going to talk about dorsal aorta, that's the first artery under the vertebrae, okay? Now how that artery is formed. But before that, just think about, in the early embryo, circulatory system was all directed outside. You have the trophoblasm formation because you are getting nutrient from the mother. But now you have to start developing inside the body the circulatory system. And the first thing starts with the formation of dorsal aorta. Now, if you look at the dorsal aorta structure, dorsal aorta is composed of, this is true with all the blood vessels, not only dorsal aorta, but this dorsal aorta is composed of two layers. And those two layers are, number one, endothelial lining. So the cells which are going to line the blood vessel, okay? And then alveoli here. So if there is a blood vessel, you should have these cells lining like this. So these cells are called endothelial cells. Okay? And these endothelial lines are surrounded by the layer of smooth muscle. And outside this you will have this layer of, these are all smooth muscles. So ultimately you need to form a tube, right? In the tube, here you will have blood, but on the surrounding you will have this smooth muscle, and inside you will have endothelial cell. Now, both of these endothelial cell lining and surrounding smooth muscle layer, that comes from posterior sclerotome. So posterior sclerotome give them. Now, and posterior sclerotome give, now this blood vessel is under the vertebrae, then some blood vessels also go inside the vertebrae because you have to provide blood to the spinal cord also, right? Those are their lining are also provided by the posterior sclerotome. So both dorsal aorta and vertebral arteries, they both are from posterior sclerotome. Okay, now how this thing is formed? So just think about, I'm drawing it like this now. So this was your neural tube, right? Next to neural tube, if you draw it left, neural tube, right here is your sclerotome, right? So next to neural tube is the sclerotome. Now I'm drawing it like this because I want to talk about anterior posterior part, right? And then right here, say you have this sclerotome there. This is another sclerotome there. So this is the anterior part of the sclerotome, this is the posterior part of the sclerotome. right? So anterior, posterior sclerodome. So these are your sclerodome. So we said the posterior gave this. Now what happened? Now the blood vessel formation take place in the lateral mesoderm, lateral plate mesoderm. Okay. So say here is your lateral plate mesoderm. Okay. So in the lateral plate mesoderm, a transient tube-like structure is formed. Now that structure is formed dorsal aorta, and this is interesting. I'll explain you what is happening here. A tube-like structure is formed. We call it dorsal aorta, but that is not the real dorsal aorta. So we call it actually primary dorsal aorta. Okay, so what is happening? Right here is the lateral plate mesoderm. So this is the lateral plate mesoderm. I'm just writing LPM. And in the lateral plate mesoderm, say this is the tube-like structure is formed, and this structure is your primary dorsal aorta. Now, again, who is the creator in our body? Which structure? Everything is done by one structure. Notochord, right? So again, notochord does something. So what notochord does? Notochord signaling induce afferent production here in the sclerodome area. Okay, and what happened? These cells, so this is making afferent production. Now afferent is actually made in the sclerodome area by the posterior cell. Okay, now the primary dorsal aorta, it actually starts, so there are many types of afferents here. In this case, the afferent B production takes place. Okay, and right here in the primary dorsal aorta, these cells which are right here, they start expressing EPHB receptors. Now, neuron, we said, when we're talking about neuron, there are different types of afferents. There we said it's a repulsive signal, right? But in this case, this is an attractive signal. Okay, so this signaling right here is a attractive signaling. So here what happened? These afferent signaling cells, which were right here coming from the posterior, they start migrating into the primary dorsal aorta. Okay, so the cells of the posterior sclerodome, they start migrating into the primary dorsal aorta. Now what happened? These cells come there, they divide. They're still same cells, right? So these cells, they divide. So this is the primary dorsal aorta. So these cells are coming here, they divide, and when they divide, they actually spread on both sides. They spread on both sides. So they are dividing, they are spreading on both sides, both side, both side, both side, and ultimately these cells, they form, so posterior sclerotome cells differentiate into endothelial cell and smooth muscle. So they spread out and then they form a structure like this. Now, so what happened to the cells which were making primary dorsal aorta? Okay, so the primary dorsal aorta cells, these are from lateral plate mesoderm, right? These are made in lateral plate mesoderm. They form hematopoietic stem cells. And hematopoietic stem cells, what they do? They give you all the blood cell types. Okay. Now, these cells have changed into endothelial cell and smooth muscles, posterior sclerotome cell, and the lateral plate mesoderm cell, which were forming primary dorsal aorta, they have changed into blood cell type. Now we don't call it primary dorsal aorta. Now we call it definitive dorsal aorta. Right? So in this way, the blood vessel is formed. Now what is happening, let me explain you again. So we are saying that formation of dorsal aorta. We are saying this is the first formed aorta in the body. This is beneath the vertebra, and the dorsal aorta is true for every blood vessel, are composed of inner endothelial cell, which are surrounded by the smooth muscle layer. And we are saying that the cells which are going to make endothelial cell and smooth muscle cells, they are coming from posterior sclerotome. Okay? And before the formation of this dorsal aorta, what happened? In the lateral plate mesoderm, a structure is formed. And that structure is called primary dorsal aorta. It's a tube-like structure, temporary structure. Okay? And when this structure is formed, then notochord play a role. Notochord signaling induce afferent in the posterior sclerotome cell. They start secreting afferent. And the cells which are on this primary dorsal aorta, they start making a receptor FP. Under that influence, these afferent secreting cells, they actually start moving toward the FP receptor cells. And these cells move and they enter the primary dorsal aorta. Once they enter the primary dorsal aorta, these cells start dividing. And when these cells divide, they start spreading around. And when they spread around, they essentially transform or basically change into smooth muscle and endothelial cell. Making sense? And the cell which were forming the primary dorsal aorta, those cells change into the hematopoietic stem cells. So in this way, you get the formation of definitive dorsal aorta, and this is essentially the same mechanism that is going to happen for all the blood vessels. Making sense? Any confusion anywhere? Okay, talk to each other for a minute.
which is the blood type. And then that's now closed towards
Any doubt here? Very okay. Doubt?
What are the stem cells called again?
Hematopoietic.
How you spell
Hematopoietic.
it? IETIC?
Yeah, hematopoietic. Poitic. So these are all the blood vessels are, all the blood cells are coming from these cells. Any other doubt here?
No.
You are okay? William, fine? Okay, now we are moving to intermediate. So far we are talking about the paraxial wisdom, right? We did talk about a little bit about the adequate wisdom. We said, okay, the dorsal aorta is coming from there. Now we are going to talk about intermediate. Wisdom. And we want to talk about specifically the kidney formation. And so for example, if you remember, we said if this is the cross section of the embryo, and what you see here, you see here is, so this is the center, right? Paraxial mesoderm here, paraxial mesoderm here, paraxial mesoderm. Then you have intermediate mesoderm. And then you have lateral plate mesoderm. Right? Now, so what happens, the kidney formation takes place in the intermediate mesoderm. So intermediate will come from kidney. Okay, so normally, again, you have your neurotube, everything, I'm not drawing that, right? So now, so kidney is coming from the intermediate mesoderm. Now, if you do an experiment, you want to see what is important for the kidney formation. We say intermediate mesoderm is important for the kidney formation. And you say, okay, let's take a needle and essentially get a cut here. Put a needle, just breaking the connection of paraxial mesoderm from the intermediate mesoderm. If you do that, so normally what is going to happen if there is no cut, then you should have a kidney here, you should have a kidney here, and you should have a kidney here, right? We have two kidneys, that's right. You get two kidneys there. But if you cut here, what is going to happen is you are going to find kidney only on this side. Whereas no kidney on cut side. So what does it tell us? It tells us that the paraxial mesoderm is required for kidney formation. Making sense? Therefore, paraxial mesoderm required for kidney formation. So far it is okay? Now, you do another experiment. And what you do is, you keep this thing like this, or you take this paraxial mesoderm from this side and put that paraxial mesoderm from here near the lateral plate mesoderm. Paraxial mesoderm here, take it from here and put it in the lateral plate mesoderm. Now what happens? Normally you should have kidney like this, right? But because you have taken this paraxial mesoderm from here, put it on that side. So what is going to happen? You are not going to have any kidney here because there is no paraxial mesoderm on this side, right? Here, you have this paraxial mesoderm. This is going to induce kidney there in the intermediate mesoderm. But what happened? This paraxial mesoderm which you put here, that actually induces even the lateral plate mesoderm to form kidney. So what is going to happen? You are going to have another kidney here on this side. So this kidney is coming from intermediate mesoderm, and this kidney is coming from lateral plate mesoderm. So what does it mean? It means that paraxial mesoderm is not only required for kidney formation, actually is sufficient on its own to induce formation of kidney in mesoderm. Because paraxial mesoderm did not differentiate between lateral plate mesoderm or intermediate mesoderm. It just converted whatever mesoderm was there into the kidney. Making sense? Now, so what is there special in the paraxial mesoderm? What paraxial mesoderm does? Paraxial mesoderm induces expression of. So remember, when we talk about many packs, we did talk about packs 1, we did talk about packs 3, we did talk about packs 7, right? But here what happened, paraxial mesoderm induced the expression of packs 2. And what packs 2 does? Packs 2 induces expression of packs 8. And packs 2 also induces expression of limb 1. Limb 1. Now, limb 1 further induces expression of packs 2. So it's kind of a cycle there. And limb 1 is critical for kidney formation. So, if you inject limb 1 anywhere, you say, okay, take the limb 1, inject on this side. You can get extra kidney. So number of kidneys can increase or decrease based on the limb 1 expression. Knock down limb 1, no kidney. Overexpressed limb 1, you can have multiple kidneys. So what we are saying? We are saying that the paraxial mesoderm can induce kidney. So paraxial mesoderm is required. So that means some factor come out from the paraxial mesoderm that is going to influence here in the intermediate mesoderm to induce the expression of packs 2, packs 8, and limb 1. Limb 1 is critical. We are saying that if we take lateral plate, this paraxial mesoderm, and you put it next to the lateral plate mesoderm, it can induce even the lateral plate mesoderm to form the kidney. So that means paraxial mesoderm is required for kidney formation and is sufficient on its own to induce the formation of kidney. So what is there so special? We are saying it induces expression of PAX2, PAX2 induces PAX8, and PAX2 also do LIM1, LIM1 further regulate PAX2. Now, but LIM1 is critical for the kidney formation. If you knock down LIM1, no kidney, overexpress LIM1, you can have multiple kidneys in multiple places. Making sense? Okay, talk to Jill for a minute, then we'll go further.
Did you say this is the expression from this induced expression from the intermediate? I feel like this is like does this go
Yeah, well, I mean, it induces into whatever it's trying to like, you know,
So the
Yeah.
fraction will
sending
reduce
to
the lateral.
whatever it turns it into.
Okay, but like is PAX modular? You know what I mean? Like is something
Fraction is
which one?
Any doubt?
Well, this is just starting PAX 2.
So like LIM1 is still in the fraction.
Doubts?
Yeah.
Are these all still in the paraxial mesoderm?
Hmm?
Are these still all in the fraction?
No, paraxial mesoderm induces.
In the intermediate.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is induces. That's what it's required. Induces means it induces. It causes. Wherever you put it next to the lateral plate mesoderm, it's going to tell lateral plate mesoderm to make PAX2 and LIM1. If you put to intermediate, it tell intermediate mesoderm to make PAX2, PAX8 and LIM1. So ultimately LIM1 is critical for the formation of the kidney. Making sense? Now we have, so all the 3 days we'll keep on doing kidney.
We have a question. So for next week, can we do a lecture on Tuesday and present on Friday? Because we didn't count the pictures right, and I don't think we're gonna be finished.